Don't.
Joe Biden is very much alive.
What's up, guys? It's Benny. Breaking news, Joe Biden is not long for this earth. It's not us saying that. It's the experts. We're just putting the pieces together. This is uncomfortable for people to hear because it will be a shattering of the lies that have been told to them. But it's time for those lies to come crashing down. And if you know where to look, the picture becomes very clear. When Joe Biden disappeared for 2 weeks because he had COVID, right? A very convenient disguise for what was truly going on. And we're going to tell you about that in just a second. His brother went on ABC News and said, we need to just appreciate Joe Biden and the little time he has left. Is this normally something that you would say about a family member if something wasn't horribly wrong?
Biden, one of President Biden's two younger brothers, and here's what he told us. He said, I'm incredibly proud of my brother. Selfishly, I will have him back to enjoy whatever time we have left.
Weird thing to say, right? What a strange thing to say when Kamala Harris was on the phone with Joe Biden, even though it was obviously a recording. She said, oh, Joe, you're not going anywhere, which is another strange thing to say to someone who's alive.
Oh, thank you. Can we just give it up again for my husband? It is so good to hear our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we
hear how she said that. Joe, I know you're still on the recording. She said, I know you're still on the record. She stopped herself, right? Just worth noting. But here, listen to this.
Our president's voice. Joe, I know you're still on the call, and we've been talking every day. You guys heard it from Doug's voice. We love Joe and Jill. We really do. They truly are like family to us. And we do. Everybody here does.
It's mutual.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, Joe.
I knew you were still there. You're not going anywhere, she says, through gritted, sociopathic teeth and laughter. Why was she saying this? Well, it's really important because the news cycle is the lifespan of a gnat these days to remind ourselves what was happening here. And then we're going to get to some breaking news that has just broken across the wires that is really dark and really bad for Joe Biden. At the end of it all, meaning at the end of Joe Biden's residency as president, Joe Biden could barely walk. Something horrible happened. It's not COVID. He's terribly sick. Joe Biden looked sick and acted sick. Look at him trying to get into the plane here. The breeze is blowing him backward in this clip. When Joe Biden was walking into the aircraft, it was pretty obvious, and these are, of course, the only really unstaged moments for Joe Biden, it was pretty obvious something was horribly wrong. This isn't a clip that I've slowed down. This isn't a clip that I've manipulated in any way. There's no need to do that. Look at how slow his steps are. Something worse than Parkinson's, something worse than dementia is going on here. What exactly is it? Now, this was a mysterious trip. The last time we saw Joe Biden for weeks. It's been weeks since we saw Joe Biden, right? This was the last time we saw Joe. He was getting off the plane apparently because he had COVID. He had canceled an event in Las Vegas. But even that was up to major interpretation. Biden never had COVID. He's a threat to democracy, said President Trump on Truth Social. President Biden suffered an undisclosed medical emergency during his time in Las Vegas, police sources say. Tucker Carlson reporting it out.
Source close to Las Vegas Metro Police. The official story was that Biden's trip was cut short last week due to COVID. However, according to this source, U.S. Secret Service informed Las Vegas Metro that there was an emergency situation involving Joe Biden and to close necessary streets so that POTUS could be transported immediately to University Medical, which they began to do in earnest. Then mysteriously, there was a stand-down order, and the Secret Service informed local Vegas PD that they were going to medevac POTUS to Johns Hopkins, which they presume meant fly him back east as soon as possible. Apparently, the rumor mill in the police department was that Joe Biden was dying or already dead, possibly. I didn't think too much about this lead. It seemed too wild to be true. But given that Joe Biden has been out of public sight for days and dropped out of the race via an X post, and his brother James indicated health was a factor, I'm beginning to grow more curious if COVID or something else has been more serious than reported.
More serious than reported. Well, what has been reported? Do you know that Kamala Harris was technically the first woman president for 85 minutes? As Joe Biden went under total anesthesia during a medical procedure. What exactly was that medical procedure? In this article from 2021. White House released Joe Biden's health summary describing an active president who's fit for duty hours after presidential power was temporarily transferred to Kamala Harris while Biden underwent a colonoscopy. Now, why would Joe Biden be needing a colonoscopy? Joe Biden has struggled with cancer before. He's had multiple brain aneurysms that required major surgery. Joe Biden's not a healthy man. Joe Biden's had a cursed medical history. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we're finding out something pretty dark. Brand new health scare for Joe Biden. They have discovered a small nodule in his prostate during a medical exam. Joe Biden, 82, the oldest president to ever leave office. Doctors have discovered a small nodule in his prostate. They need further evaluation. It was found during a physical exam, they told ABC News. Biden left office, the oldest living president. The nodule is a firm lump, a swelling that can develop throughout the body. They could be benign, but in somebody Joe Biden's age, it's an indication of cancer or really, really bad infection. We know that Joe Biden has had major problems with incontinence. This is not me trying to make a potty or pee-pee poo-poo joke. This has been well reported through members of Congress on our program and others that Joe Biden has bathroom issues and has soiled himself on foreign trips. This has been reported out in the British media that this happened in front of Queen Camilla and members of the royal family, that Joe Biden couldn't control his bowel movements. This is also something that happens when you have colon cancer. Colon cancer is the number 3 most deadly cancer in all of America. It is a real killer, especially for men, and especially for older men. In February 2023, Biden has cancer removed from his chest before entering office. Joe Biden, again, had to give up the powers of the president in order to get a colon cancer screening. So you're starting to see a pattern here. So what happens next? No further treatment. This is just talking about the first cancer that was taken off. It was a skin cancer called a basal cell carcinoma. In February 2024, Biden's doctor declared him fit to serve. Forthcoming book details how Biden's deterioration towards the end of his single term was so severe that some aides weighed whether he needed to use a wheelchair. Why would you need to use a wheelchair? Well, check this out, ladies and gentlemen. I think we're starting to put the pieces together. Here's Joe Biden in the last time that we saw Joe Biden for weeks before he dropped out. Joe Biden disappeared after this. You're going to notice something horrifying. This is after the health scare and emergency in Las Vegas. You'll note that Joe Biden can barely do the stairs. Now, that's not necessarily anything new, but then something awful happens in this footage. Please watch.
Mr. President, any response to Schumer? Any response to Chuck Schumer?
Chuck Schumer was calling, you can hear the reporter saying Chuck Schumer was calling for Joe Biden to drop out of the race. Watch this. Look at this. Joe Biden tries to smile, and he can only use half of his face. Look. See the paralysis on one side of his face? Something was up here, man. It wasn't COVID. Look at that. But then it gets even worse. This is what makes us think potentially cancer. Maybe Joe Biden already had horrible colon cancer and was barely surviving. Watch this. Joe Biden tries to get into the vehicle, and he can't get in. Please observe, you can see Joe Biden struggling to hoist himself into the vehicle. He keeps pushing and yanking and pulling, but he can't get his lower torso to move. An indication of some type of paralysis, some type of horrible dysfunction, potentially, internally. Joe Biden can barely get into the vehicle. Why this wasn't a more famous clip, I don't know. We played it. Why they didn't stay on this shot, I don't know. You can see the Secret Service agents come in behind Joe Biden and hoist him into the vehicle. This is coming on the heels today of reporting that Joe Biden, many of the aides of Joe Biden, had expected him to have to use a wheelchair if he were reelected. This from a new book out by scumbag Jake Tapper. Maybe he wanted better parking, some saying. Yeah. For years, we were told that Biden was top of his game. He hadn't lost a step. Now we find out the White House physician said he would need to literally be put in a wheelchair if he fell one more time. The Biden era lies and betrayals continue to mount. But this is what's particularly alarming. Them finding nodules inside, and the fact that this was leaked to ABC and that the doctors need further evaluation, we're just going to call it right now. You know, because I've seen it in my own family. Joe Biden has cancer. Joe Biden has some type of... So this is clearly an indication. And all of the other evidence, the medical emergencies, the collapsing, the inability to move, all the history of cancer, Joe Biden doing the colonoscopy and going under total anesthesia to do that, all of it adds up to Joe Biden has some type of very bad cancer. We'll say it, and we mean it. I don't like Joe Biden. I hate his presidency. I hate all of his policies, and I think that it's probably the worst presidency in my lifetime. Joe Biden, of all people, and all people, right? Joe Biden plus all people deserve like human dignity, humanity. I want all of my fellow Americans to live happy, long lives with upstanding lives with dignity. Joe Biden is being purposefully and openly trotted out while he is sick. Look at this. This is a bandage from an IV. This is some horrible IV. Is this chemotherapy? Makes you wonder. You know, this is how they do chemotherapy these days. Is that what's going on here? Is that chemo? That would make a lot of sense. That bandage was also with Joe Biden when he was at the Vatican recently. You see a huge bandage on his hand. Why is it Joe Biden getting an IV? Is that chemotherapy? And then you see Joe Biden was zoinked out of his mind. This is a real photo. Joe Biden was completely zoinked out of his mind. What was happening here? What is this? Joe Biden is being taken advantage of. His dying body is being taken advantage of by a sick succubus Jezebel of a wife who's milking his last moments for her fame and to get on The View. It'll disgust you with every fiber of your being, but here's what Jill Biden was up to less than a week ago. Now that we're finding out that Joe Biden has all these mounting, horrifying health problems, Jill Biden was dragging her husband on The View so that he could answer questions about his cognitive decline, and then he can't answer questions about that cognitive decline. So he declines to answer. So Jill Biden then starts answering for him about his cognitive decline. It's all so effed up, man. It makes my skin crawl. But if you don't hate Joe Biden enough, you will after watching this.
Mr. President, since you left office, there have been a number of books that have come out, deeply sourced from Democratic sources, that claim in your final year there was a dramatic decline in your cognitive abilities. In the final year of your presidency, what is your response to these allegations, or are these sources wrong?
They are wrong. There's nothing to sustain that, number one. Number two, you know, think of what we're left with. We're left with a circumstance where we had an insurrection when I started, not since the Civil War. We had a circumstance where we were in a position that the pandemic, because of the incompetence of the last outfit, end up over 1 million people dying, And we're also in a situation where we found ourselves unable to deal with a lot of just basic issues, and which I won't go into in the interest of time. And so we went to work, and we got it done. And you know, one of the things that well, I'm
well, and Alyssa, you know, one of the things I think is that the people who wrote those books were not in the White House with us, and they didn't see how hard Joe worked every single day. I mean, he'd get up, he'd put in a full day, and then at night I'd be in bed, you know, reading my book, and he was still on the phone reading his briefings, working with staff. I mean, it was nonstop. It's the White House, being president is not like a job. It's a lifestyle. It's a life that you live. You live it 24 hours a day. That phone can ring at 11 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning. It's constant. You never leave it. And Joe worked really hard. I think he was a great president. And if you look at things today, give me Joe Biden anytime.
That's worth the invitation to come to the show.